Mm. It came again down to knowing your numbers. Like most construction companies didn't really know their profit on a job and like how much cash flow they were injecting into jobs. Because a lot of construction companies act like banks, even the small businesses. They finance all these job costs and then they wonder why they can't make payroll. So we really wanted to highlight that for the construction industry through like really good bookkeeping practices and some software that we built to help keep track of job costing. But yeah, that's essentially how we landed on. We did research and found an area where we felt there was a big problem and that we felt like we could build a company around for the long term.
Welcome, fellow entrepreneurs and goal-getters, to Entrepreneurial Elevation, Unleashing Greatness Within, with myself, your host, Kelly Beveridge, and my guest today, Leeroy Beeby. He is all the way from South Africa, yet he's now living in Toronto, I believe. Is that correct, Leeroy?
Yeah, that's correct.
Toronto, awesome. He's living in Toronto. He's been here since 2018, and I'm already just giddy because we just were talking for 10 minutes about South Africa. And if you've been listening to my podcast, I lived there for some time, and so I said to Leeroy, we're just meeting, yet I already like you so much because it just brings back fond memories. So excited to have him here today. His background, he's been a qualified chartered accountant with KPMG. He had a bookkeeping company with 20 plus employees. He's now the co-founder of Check the Level, which we're going to talk about today, which is a bookkeeping co-pilot for QuickBooks Online. In a sense, he's going to describe what it is. And just really excited to have him here. He's clearly an entrepreneur, somebody who keeps reinventing himself. His business now is software for bookkeeping and accounting. And so just Leeroy, thanks for being on the episode today.
No problem. Thank you for the invitation, Kelly. Happy to be here.
Yeah, that's so awesome. You know what? I'm curious, just even chatting about your background and your travels to Canada. Maybe you could share a bit of your story and how did you even come into being an entrepreneur in the first place?
Yeah, I think my parents have started a lot of small businesses when I was growing up. I think I counted the other day, it was like over 15, somewhere around 15 small businesses, ranging from schools to construction companies. And my mom's latest business, she's a psychologist. She actually started psychiatric wards. Very entrepreneurial spirit stemming from my family. And part of the reason why I became an accountant is just because I saw how much challenges they had around understanding their finances and their day-to-day bookkeeping. Inspired me to actually lead a career in accounting and see if I could make sense of that world for them and myself.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, you know what? That makes sense. Usually I find if kids grow up in an entrepreneurial household, they usually follow in their parents' footsteps and then say, I love the idea of the freedom, yet I'm going to do it a little bit different than they did.
Yeah, learn from their mistakes. There's definitely some things that I know my parents really struggled with, and I've tried to avoid those in my life.
Do you mind sharing what some of them are, since the audience we have is entrepreneurs? The reason why I love my podcast is if we can help some of the other entrepreneurs who are following in our footsteps not make some of the mistakes and save them some time. What did you see? And not to throw your parents under the bus, yet what did you see them doing? Obviously, they're successful. They've started 15 different businesses. That's super cool. Yet what did you see that you wanted to make sure you avoided and did differently?
Those are good questions. One was finances. As I mentioned, it inspired me to lead a career in finance. My parents always struggled with their numbers and quite often led to a few arguments at the dinner table around that. Running your business by your numbers can really just remove emotion out of the equation, make you confident in your business decision and also what you need to do to move forward, right? Like it sets targets. So like having at least some baseline understanding and things with ChatGPT and AI make it a lot easier just to plug in your financials and ask for some insights into it. But the big challenge we came into, we'll talk about this I'm sure later, is, okay, well, how do you know your numbers are accurate? That's what our tool's aimed at doing, the current one we've built. That was one of the big things, is just trying to run your business by your numbers. I think the other one was just, even though they had it, I've struggled with it. It's just hire slow, fire fast. You don't ever want to rush a hiring decision, especially if it's in it's a managerial position. Rather take it slow, do the tests. I know that's not always easy because the business can demand things of you. But in the long run, you're going to save yourself a lot of headache just making the right hires up front and testing people for those skills. And like when I started my business, my parents were always like, well, how do you know you're going to rely on a lot of people? How do you know you're going to hire the right people? And I spent a lot of time in researching and learning and adapting. You're not always going to get it right the first time. on good hiring practices.
Yeah, cool. And okay, and then so you decided, hey, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Did you start your business while you were in South Africa, or did you move to Canada and then begin your business?
Yeah, so actually, I moved to Canada and started my business. What ended up happening was I qualified as a chartered accountant from KPMG, and then I ended up working in Bermuda for about 2 years. It was quite nice working out of industry. I worked as a consultant, busy designing financial systems for large organizations. There are more businesses in Bermuda than there are people. It is a tax shelter, so there's that reason. Bermuda was a small place, and I wanted to explore the rest of the world, and always wanted to do my master's. I'm an academic at heart. I think academics are a safe place to be in comparison to an entrepreneur. But I always liked the academics, and I always wanted to get that, especially the international experience of studying. Like I really enjoyed studying in South Africa, and I always was curious, like what would it be like to study abroad? What was the difference in the caliber of academia between South Africa as a developing third world country versus a first world country like Canada? Ended up doing my master's at the University of Toronto. And in there, they actually had a whole bunch of incubation programs. Okay, you could get credits for going to work at a startup for 3 months, which was really interesting. Ended up doing that. And what really surprised me was like how welcoming the startup scene was here in Toronto. A lot of government support. And I find like in Canada, they, especially at least at the university I went to, they really try and get you to start your own thing, or incentivize you to, or support you in doing so. Went down that road and started a business straight out of my degree. Ended up finding a co-founder, and initially we were building software for construction companies, but then evolved into bookkeeping for construction companies.
Yeah, that's so cool. It's so interesting, hey, when you look back, just how each step leads to the next one. And
Sure.
I'm curious because then you found yourself in Toronto and you're in the startup scene. Why did you, like, first of all, dive into the construction industry? Was that because you saw your parents in that industry, or did you see a niche, or did it just make sense? Like, how did you target that industry? Because I feel like that's where a lot of people get confused in entrepreneurship. They have an idea, they know what they want to do, yet they don't really know where their target market is or how to choose a target market.
Yeah, that's a good question. It did stem, having my dad been in the construction industry helped a lot. Also, Toronto was just so much construction all the time. But the big thing that came around was like I read something that like 9 out of 10 construction businesses were failing. And I thought that statistic was quite scary, considering when you look at most construction companies, they're always so busy. There's always demand, especially like in something like Toronto. I think Toronto had the most cranes in North America at one point. So it was like, okay, what's going on here? So explored that a little bit. Well, at the same time, I think I didn't want to go down this path by myself starting a business. So a big thing for me was also, one of the things I always recommend is try to find a business partner. I know it's not always easy and it creates hard questions, but entrepreneurship is a very lonely path. And having someone that you can share that with is incredibly valuable. I've leaned on him and he's leaned on me many times, but my co-founder also came from a family of construction. His dad was an electrician, so that also helped us connect on solving this problem. But really, I just saw the issue. I looked for facts and research and, okay, well, hey, this seems like a real big problem that came across my table. I can relate to it because my family is in it, and my co-founder could relate to it because his family was in it. And it came again down to knowing your numbers. Like most construction companies didn't really know their profit on a job and like how much cash flow they were injecting into jobs. Because a lot of construction companies act like banks, even the small businesses. They finance all these job costs and then they wonder why they can't make payroll. So we really wanted to highlight that for the construction industry through like really good bookkeeping practices and some software that we built to help keep track of job costing. But yeah, that's essentially how we landed on. We did research and found an area where we felt there was a big problem and that we felt like we could build a company around for the long term.
I love that. That's so smart. Kudos to you for doing that. And I know that was a really successful business. And I'm curious why you transitioned from that business into what you're doing now. And maybe if you can share, what is your business now? What do you guys specifically focus on? And why did you transition?
So the business that we focus on right now is error detection software for bookkeepers and so like accounting departments. Essentially what we do is our software is an assistant to review any new transactions in your QuickBooks Online currently, and I let you know if there's any potential errors in it. Accounting's built on a lot of rules, especially in terms of how you maintain that data. And then from that, you can obviously use that data to create great business decisions. But the problem is, one of the things I noticed was when we're doing the bookkeeping for these construction companies, the books were quite often like quite a large mess. And I don't want to point fingers here because the client can be troublesome, the bookkeeper can be troublesome, but at the end of the day, there wasn't really anything that was like, okay, hey, these are all the problems, regardless of who's making them. And what ended up happening was a lot of our clients were spending quite a lot of money on just cleanups. And when we started the company, it was 2019. It was during COVID. Construction companies were doing really well. So it was quite easy for them to come work with us, and we'd give them this amazing reporting. But as the construction industry started slowing down after COVID, clients needed to bring it back in and like rain down expenses. So I saw a lot of our clients leave, unfortunately, because of pricing issues. And I didn't want to leave them in a position where they couldn't have good financials or know whether their financials were in a good state or not, right? So from there, I looked at, okay, well, hey, is there a tool that we could build that would almost act like Grammarly for bookkeepers and guide them into, hey, let's just get you 80% of the way there so that by the time tax year end comes around, you're not spending, again, atrocious amounts of money just trying to solve your books. And then on top of that, at least you have some guidance in making some business decisions on financials that are reliable. So that's where it went. Just seeing all the mess in the books when we first got the clients, and then realizing that there's a more cost-effective way to have users be more confident in their numbers through technology.
No, I love that. Once again, you found the problem, right? And had created a solution to solve it. And so I'm curious, I have a few questions as you just shared everything. I'm curious because you make everything sound so easy, right? Okay, so we realized that like all of their bookkeepings were a mess, their accounting's a mess. So we just created this assistant. Like you make that sound so easy. We just created this assistant.
Yeah.
They go there, they clean it up, and it's awesome. So like maybe just share for those who are listening, because I know entrepreneurship really is like entrepreneurs are driven because they have so many ideas, right? Like we have ideas and we're problem solvers, but we could just sit here with our ideas right till the cows come home. Yet you like sound like you have an idea and then you like put it into action and you make it happen. So when you're like, okay, we're going to transition, we're going to create this software, like, can you maybe, before we talk about how you actually help, like, how did you go about just saying, here's the idea, we've got to create this software, and actually go and create it and then implement it and execute it? Because that's like entrepreneurship right there. I feel like you could probably give us a masterclass with your experience.
Yeah, I know. Great question. Again, it was all coming down to problems. The thing with us that really, I think, made me realize that this issue was worth solving. There was a problem, because first it's problem discovery. And then if you can clearly define the problem, I think so many times entrepreneurs focus on the solution as opposed to defining the problem and then looking for solutions around that. I think it's a very important thing, especially internally. When we look at solving a problem, we always say, how might we solve this? Or what is the core problem that we're solving before we even come up with an idea? Because you need to have that succinct in ideally in one sentence or a few words before iterating on a solution. But for us, as you mentioned, actually, we grew incredibly rapidly. The bookkeeping firm, we hit 7 figures and hired up to 20 employees within 18 months. I wouldn't put many people through that. Like, as great as that sounds, I would say that's probably one of the hardest if not one of the hardest periods of my life, because you quickly realize your mistakes and like how much they cost you, and you're constantly in a state of fight, first flight. And we managed to get through that, and it was a hell of a learning experience. But one of the things that I really, really struggled with was, and I think a lot of accountants or bookkeepers do, and even if you're a founder, is just customer feedback. If your product isn't doing or your service isn't doing what you expect it to, at least I took it quite personally. And I just kept coming down to, like, one of the worst things that I felt hit me the hardest was when a client came to me identifying an error that my team member had made, or an error that happened out of just sometimes the software makes mistakes, makes mistakes, and we couldn't pick that up in time, right? Mm-hmm. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, well, I can't keep having this happen where clients lose trust, especially in their bookkeeping and accounts, when errors aren't being picked up on time. And we weren't the cheapest bookkeeping firm around. So we decided, okay, well, we need to come up with a way to solve that. Came up with a very basic way to solve it internally through what we called like email notifications. Basically just a very basic set of rules to look into the accounting software, see if there were any mistakes, and notify us. And that was how the initial idea was born. And then from there, we developed the product more. But again, it was from I used a lot of my accounting and bookkeeping industry knowledge, a lot of like actual problems occurred during the building of our first company that led me to believe, okay, well, if we were internally feeling this problem, I bet you other firms are feeling this problem. And again, it's also that researching, right? You need to know, how are you different? You need to be novel. I think that's the hardest thing in the industry today is when you start a business, depending on what you want to build, you need to find a way to be novel, whether that's focusing on a niche or if you're, but focusing on a niche is one of the best ways to be novel or at least get started. But yeah, that's how we land on it. I know it might sound as easy, like to your point, it sounds easy. Writer's fallacy. Everything is so easy. But no, there was a lot of hardships, like a lot of late nights, a lot of hard work, a lot of stress.
Hey everyone, I just wanted to hop on quick and say thank you for listening to this episode and to my podcast. I really appreciate it. And I just wanted to ask if you're enjoying my podcast, if you can do me a favor and if you can like this episode and like the episodes that you listen to, leave a comment. If you can leave a review for my podcast, I would be forever grateful. And download the podcast. Head over to my YouTube Entrepreneurial Elevation and subscribe. I would be so grateful and that would be awesome as I'm looking to grow my audience and get in front of as many people as possible so that everybody can hear and listen to and learn from and take away so much goodness from all the phenomenal guests that I have on. And I would just be forever grateful once again if you were willing to do that. So just thank you so much for being here in the first place. Thanks for listening. And that's just what I wanted to hop on and ask. And so just thank you. And let's get back to the episode. Have a great day. Yeah. Well, you know what, though, thanks for sharing that, though, right? Because there's years of usually experience and sweat, blood, and tears that go into your entrepreneurial endeavors until you land on the thing. It sounds like you've landed on something that's great. And it's interesting because I agree with what you shared. Like once you started to look into a lot of these contractors' books, like they're just a mess. And I'm just thinking contractors are great at what they do, which is their trade. Like they're great at their business, yet not necessarily all the time the financial piece. And I come from a family of contractors, right? So I'm curious about what it is that you have in this system. So what would you say would be some good financial habits or strategies to adopt to run a profitable business so that your books don't get so messy in the first place?
Yeah, I think the first thing is setting realistic goals. I think, to what I talked about earlier, where we grew so rapidly, everyone might hear that and be like, that it's amazing. We all want to go after that. But as I also pointed out, it was one of the worst times in my life because I was so stressed, not sleeping well, not doing well, at least from a personal standpoint. I think, and society also creates this problem around, hey, if you build a 6-figure business, you build a 7-figure business. And then if you hit 7, you hit 8. I think setting realistic goals and like what you need out of life to live a comfortable life is a really important thing to get like right first, because this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. You're going to be building this business for a long time. And if you do land with something, and you need to be comfortable, because there is an opportunity cost associated with running your business. If you are thinking between working for someone versus starting your own business, there are pros and cons to each, and you need to be comfortable with that. So I would say the first thing is always just set your expectations and your comfort level with whatever you're going to do, and try not let the outside noise affect that, right? I know a lot of people who they do a 5-figure business and they take home quite a lot of money still, like most of its profits, or a 6-figure in that case sometimes. And they live a lot happier than people like trying to chase these large businesses. So that's important. Sorry, what was the question again? I got a little diverged there. Yeah.
No worries. I was just saying, what are some like financial habits or strategies that businesses and contractors can put in place so that their books don't get so messy in the first place?
Yeah. So yeah, I think the first thing is just like setting your expectations so that, your financial expectations of what you want out of the business so that you can grow comfortably. And then the other is just setting up like some good basic habits, like around your books, getting a bookkeeper, not trying to, I know we're hustlers and we try to do it all ourselves, but at some point there are some cost-effective ways to get some of the books done. And just understanding a base level of your financials, like you need to know how much money you're making every month, right? And what your overall costs are like, and whether your business can afford your salary. So where that comes to the financial goals. Those are like really important inputs to understand. I use technology as much as you can right now, especially with things like AI, as I mentioned earlier. Like you can just go on AI, like ChatGPT, and ask a simple question about financials and be like, I'm a 6-year-old, explain a profit and loss statement to me. And it will give you a great explanation of that, right? That's like such a great, powerful tool now, especially for just filling in those gaps of where you might not have financial knowledge.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, it's so funny, right? Because we're talking about entrepreneurship and making money and being profitable. And I think, like, I deal with a lot of entrepreneurs. The one piece that most entrepreneurs, and this is myself as well until recently, have the least understanding or knowledge about is the finances,
Yeah.
which it's like an oxymoron, right? It's or whatever that word is, like a contradiction. So it is quite interesting. And okay, and so what would you say, see similar concept, but what would you say are some of the mistakes that is made in bookkeeping? And then how does your business come in and support with that solution?
Yeah. The most, I would just talk about some of like the most common bookkeeping mistakes we see. I think the first one is not understanding your numbers and handing it off to someone that you expect to understand. I know that's hard if you've never had a bookkeeping background, but then you go do QuickBooks online. If you are going to go do the QuickBooks yourself, you should at least educate yourself to some degree, especially on what is a profit and loss statement, what is a balance sheet, and what's the difference between those. But when it comes to just basic bookkeeping, I think every transaction that you post should have a supplier or vendor assigned to them or a customer. Like just coding transactions without that just creates such headache for tax accountants at the end of the year, which could cost you a lot. The other one is not like the problem with a lot of these bookkeeping softwares is they make it so easy to do the books and they market themselves like that, but it's also easy to make mistakes. The other thing is everything should have a sales invoice. Quite often you might not have the sales invoice in your tax or your accounting software. But you should ideally set up a system where that works, just because especially when it comes down to sales tax and you have to start filing that stuff, it becomes a lot easier. And know your tax deadlines, right? You don't need to know your taxes, but you need to know when your taxes are due, and you need to make sure those are being completed. So the ones that I would rhyme off are your sales tax, if you do have to sign up for sales tax, your payroll tax, whatever side, whether you're in, like, especially if you're something like the CRA, they look at, you could get away without filing your sales tax, but when it comes to not filing your payroll tax, they're a lot more stricter and the penalties are a lot more stricter with that. So you do need to know when those are being filed. And then knowing when your corporate tax is due and if you have to file something like a T5. Like the other one is like a lot of business owners, if they do corporate, they might take something out like a draw or a dividend distribution. Do understand like what is required from a tax perspective in terms of what needs to be, like you just need to know what documents that relates. If you are going to do a dividend, you're going to need a T5, and that's going to be due at the end of your corporation's financial year end. Oh no, sorry, that's going to be due at the end of the calendar year end. Sorry. So you need to just at least know when the tax documents are due and those sort of things. And I know people, when it comes to taxes, you don't want to, like people, like a visceral experience, you don't really want to know about your taxes, but you want to know that you are submitting the documents when they're due. Your company is fulfilling that, because if it's not, you're setting yourself up for a lot more headache down the line and a lot more loss in terms of costs.
So thanks for sharing that. And so with your technology assistant, if that's what I can call it, is that okay? With your technology assistant, so he comes in, and is this the kind of stuff that the technology looks for to clean up so that you can see where you can save the person money, the company money? Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, it's part of it. So it does things like checking whether your vendors have had a consistent sales tax treatment. So, hey, has this vendor always had HST assigned to it? Versus, and the same applies for sales tax. Has this customer always had the same sales tax coded to it? Other things like customers might change the invoice date on a sales invoice in their accounting software and think, oh, that's okay. But if they change that to a period where taxes have been filed, that can create a lot of headache for tax accountants. So having something that just notifies you to say, hey, you've just changed something in a period where taxes have been filed, and creating an audit log of that so that you can either go back and reverse that or share that with your tax accountant. It really helps with ensuring that your tax is going to be filed in a streamlined manner when they're due.
Okay. And do you work with companies that are at a certain level of profit and above, or do you work with anyone?
Yeah, anyone, our product's very cheap. It's not to downplay it, but we typically work with, like, the product right now, we sell a lot to bookkeeping firms. But if you are a bookkeeper managing one file, we do charge $2.50 a month per client file. So obviously a lot of our clients deal with like hundreds of clients when they're working with us, but we do have individual companies working with us at the same time too, having our product just to double check that the work's being done. And the accounting industries or bookkeeping industry is quite interesting too. There's a lot of turnover. The average age is going up. You want, where we see the greatest value from our product is just reinforcing those bookkeeping policies that you have within your organization, even when another bookkeeper leaves. So like a bookkeeper that can leave and quickly learn on the job through the feedback our product provides in an automated way to be able to get up to speed on your bookkeeping practices.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so since launching your new company, how have you seen just maybe some success stories? Like, how have you seen your services impact these organizations? And do you have any stories that stand out?
Yeah, I think one that stands out the most is just, I think back, and I talked about like bad hires, and I talked about that earlier. I don't think there's anything more in a business that could cost you more than a bad hire. And I mean, there's that aspect of it, but there's also, I think, as a manager or employer, setting up your employees for success is also really important, giving them feedback, on the job training. When we were growing, that was one of the things I really struggled to make time for. And when I spoke to a customer recently, they literally said one of their favorite things is our product will give a summary of the week of an employee's performance and like what the errors are. And you can sit down with that team member and be like, hey, here are all the errors you made in the file. Let's work through these to see what questions you have. Because I think, especially in like fully remote environments, or people are so scared of talking about their mistakes and opening them up and having a discussion about it. Our tool sort of like breaks the ice for that. And I really like that because, like just creating a better work culture or environment, hearing customers that our product's actually doing that, going beyond just, hey, here are the errors. We're actually creating a better work environment because of your tool is, that was one of my favorite stories I've heard lately.
I love that. And I think that's actually such a great point, right? To be able to give that instant feedback and use it as a learning tool as well, right? Just to improve people's performance, which solves a lot of problems right there. I'm curious, a few last questions before we start wrapping up. I'm just curious, you have this new technology. As an entrepreneur, is part of the reason you created it because you wanted more leverage for yourself as well? Were you looking for something that you can do for business where it didn't take up the entire day of your time? Is that what, because I'm just, as entrepreneurs, I think that's a big thing we look for too, right? Is time freedom. So I'm just curious if that's why you also decided to go in this direction.
Yeah, I do. That's a good question. And that just comes back to setting your expectations on what you want out of the business, right? I've like, especially the older I get, I'm still 36, 37. I'm not as old as I'm getting, but I'm getting up there, at least at a point where I need to start reflecting on things. I think having freedom, I have hobbies. One of my passions is rock climbing. I do want to start a family at some point. These are things that having free time, you can enjoy more than just, I don't want to work 12 hours every day. That's literally where I want to be. Maybe when I was younger, that was a goal.
Yeah.
But yeah, a big part of transitioning to this product, there's still a lot of work that goes into it. But I can see a future where I can step back and move away from the company a lot easier. I'm always thinking about how I can exit the company and have it work without me being in there. Even if that's a small organization or a larger organization, that's incredibly important to me, at least how I think about it in terms of my values in starting a business.
For sure. And how important is technology to be able to do that? Your take on that? Because I'm 47 and I'm in that cusp where I'm old school and / new school. And so I believe technology is important because I want to have leverage in my business, yet I do fear it. Like I don't understand it. And so I'm slow to adopt it. And I know it would be, I think, in my best interest to adopt it quicker. I'm just curious, like for the future success of your business and for you to have the leverage that you want for yourself personally. Do you think technology and AI and all that is going to be a massive piece of the solution for that?
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to be an empowering tool. I think to some, like I'm using it quite a lot now, especially in terms of just double checking my communication or anything like that. It's really helpful. If I have any questions that I need to get answers to, it's like I'm not using Google search anymore. I'm using ChatGPT in this case. I see a big part of that because it just, what took me like a day to write like a really well piece of, like, just come up with a good article or something like that to write out, I can do in half the time with AI, or at least get the discussion started so that I can move from it. That's crazy. And you can see a lot of that. I always wonder what happens in the schools now with the essays and stuff like that. But I think technology is a big part, especially if you want to scale yourself or your business and just be more efficient. Because if you aren't using technology, you're always going to worry that you might be left behind. And then there's also the other side. If you're not using technology, can you ever step away from the business? Mm-hmm. Right? That's one of the challenges my parents had, particularly my mom, because she's a psychologist, clinical psychologist. Her patients still want to see her, and she's like in her 70s. Like, how? And yeah, it's a challenge. And I don't even know if technology can solve that problem. But I think you need to either, in terms of just trying to be competitive and building a business that can run itself, or you can step away from technology, is going to be a really big, important part of that.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, hey, I have a question just to shift gears here, and it has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Yeah, okay. I'm just curious, what do you miss most about South Africa?
Yeah, sure. I miss the weather.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the weather gets to me here. Like, I'm still not used to snow. I miss the ocean. Like, living in Toronto, I'm not next to an ocean. I miss that. And then the food, the quality of the food, the fruit and everything there. And I also like wine. Yeah, you just don't, like, everything in Canada is a lot more expensive for those things that I took for granted when I was living there.
For sure. You know what? I've been very blessed and traveled many places in the world. And people say, what do you love about South Africa? There's a million things. Yet I'm like, the food there is the best. Like, yeah. I have never eaten such fresh, awesome, organic, quality food, and the wine and the coffee, right? And then, of course, the people and the place, and it's just magical, and the atmosphere. And you're a rock climber. So is there rock climbing anywhere around Toronto that you found that is good, or no?
There is. You obviously can only do it. I don't ice climb. If you ice climb, you probably got more access to that in winter. But there's some really good gyms. So I go to Joe Rock Heads, which is down the road. It's like the oldest gym in Canada, I think. And then the other thing is where is it again? Burlington, Mount Nemo. That's a good spot. If you go out a little further to like Collingwoods, there's some good spots around there, like the swamp. But the other challenge you got to deal with Toronto, that's the other thing I miss about South Africa, is you don't get so many bugs. The bugs are when it's bug season, it's quite aggressive. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Well, like you said, you're going to get to go back and at least miss a couple Christmases of snow because you'll go visit your parents. So that's cool. Okay. So Leeroy, where can people find you? So if they want to know more about your services and how you can help their bookkeeping organizations and just follow you because you're just an interesting guy, where can they do that?
Checkthelevel.com, or even Check the Level on Instagram. Our handle is Check the Level on pretty much everything. If you want to follow us, we're on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or I can check out our website to learn more at checkthelevel.com, or just follow me on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. I do post on there quite actively, so feel free to send me a LinkedIn request or just follow me there.
Okay, cool. Okay, I always like to end with 3 questions. So my first question is, what would you say, you've had these various chapters of success, so what would you say today is your version of success for yourself?
Yeah, my version of success is doing work that I'm passionate in, right? It's things that I can wake up every morning and be excited to do. That's incredibly important. That's my definition of success, is if I can wake up every morning feeling like I'm solving a problem that I love solving, that's good. That's good.
Cool. Fair enough. Okay, next question. What would be 3 tips you would give the entrepreneurs who are listening to unleash their inner greatness?
Yeah, sure. These are good questions.
No, sorry. That's the tagline of my podcast. That's why that question's in there.
Yeah. 3 tips. I think one of my favorite quotes is life doesn't begin until life starts outside of your comfort zone. I'm watching this. Basically, don't be afraid to get outside of your comfort zone to learn. It's really important as a founder, entrepreneur, that you get into those situations, because you're going to find yourself learning. It's just like where you learn the most. Another one, always seek feedback. Share your thoughts with others. Don't be afraid to. And again, even if the answers aren't what you want to hear, at least hear them and think them through. Focus on data rather than what you think is right. Assumptions, always double check your assumptions. That's where it falls on. And then the third one is, build a business that you can expect yourself working on for at least 10 years, right? So many people can end up doing a business they don't enjoy. I've seen that with a lot of our clients in the past. They get stuck doing something they don't want to do. What's nice, though, as an entrepreneur, as a founder of the business, you control everything, so you can change it. You don't have to be stuck in that. You just have to be willing to make that shift.
Awesome. I love it. Great answers. Okay, last question. What would be a call to action to the listener? So they hop off here. What's something that they could go and implement this week, maybe when it comes to their books or their bookkeeping or just your message today?
Yeah. I guess just, I would say, yeah, actually pull up your profit and loss statement, or even look at something like, does your bank balance match in your accounting software to your actual bank account, and ask why isn't it matching. I think that's quite a big red flag. One of the first things I always check when I look at you said books is what the bank says is the financial, what the bank account balance and the financials say it is versus what is in the actual bank balance. Do those make sense? If they're not, just ask your bookkeeper why.
Awesome. Awesome. You might just have saved some people some stress there and some money. So go and do that. Go and do what Leeroy is recommending. Leeroy, just thanks for being here today. It's just been great to talk to you. This is a topic that, I'm not very knowledgeable in, so I always love to learn from everybody who comes on and get more knowledgeable as well in business and finances and bookkeeping and all that good stuff. So it's just really nice to meet you, and just grateful that you were on the episode today.
Thanks, Katie. I'm glad to be here.
Hey everyone, I'm just hopping on quick to let you know I have partnered with my sponsors, Coach Core, because I want to promote their services because they've had such an impact and positive influence within my business. And I want everyone to know about their service and what's available to you. So if you're an entrepreneur and a business person who's been wanting to streamline your back end systems, you're going to want to listen up. And so I don't know about you, but I was frustrated because as I started my business, I was realizing, oh my gosh, I need to be paying money for my website. I've got to have my calendar and scheduling going on. I've got to be paying for online course systems. I want my landing pages and my funnels and so on and so on and so on. And it was overwhelming and expensive. And so I found Coach Core, and I am so impressed with their business and their values, and I've just aligned with them. And what they are is, I think of them as a simple business in a box, a one-stop shop for everything that you need to grow and scale your business when it comes to your systems and being organized and the back-end pieces of your business. And so if you're wanting to streamline and have everything in one place, from your website to your contacts to numerous SMS to social media, all being housed under one calendar, to your calendar, to your funnels, to your landing pages, online courses, and so on, plus the bonus is you get hands-on support a couple times a week. Somebody will come on and you can actually talk to a real person, and you can get your questions answered. You can get guidance around the systems. You can get support with marketing and strategies and business. And it really feels like a community while you're getting system support. And the best part is that it's extremely affordable at $97 a month, 97 US dollars. You can have all of that in one spot. And so go into my show notes and check it out. Check out Coach Core Services. Email me if you have questions, email Coach Core, and get your business organized and streamlined and your system set up so you can focus on building your business and giving your time and attention where it needs to go and scale your business to success. And so just thanks, Coach Core, for being there for me, and check them out, everybody.